Chris, thank you very much for taking the time to join me on Culture Corner today, where I speak to leaders in tech about how they create strong cultures and high-performing teams. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks very much. I mean, obviously we've been building a bit of a relationship up over the past few weeks, and it's a real pleasure to be invited on. So thanks very much for the opportunity.
No problem, no problem. Looking forward to this, Chris. So I always kick off. The first bit I ask is, obviously we know each other, but for anyone who's listening that doesn't know you, if you just give me a bit of an overview of who you are, what you do, your team responsibilities, etc.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Chris Henderson, and as you can probably tell, I'm from Newcastle, so big friendly Geordie. I am currently in the position of quality engineer and manager at Dunelm. I've been with them for coming up to 5 years now. So I've been enjoying my time there. I've had two other roles while I've been there. I've been in an estate role and also a principal quality engineer role as well. But this time I've been in my current role for about the last 12 months now. So settling in quite nicely.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris, and we'll dive into that. First of all, just to kick it off, how did you get into tech? Was yours a standard journey through schools and college and uni, or was it a different route?
No, completely different route. And I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned about schools there. I mean, when I was back in school, you always have the conversations when you're about to be a school leaver, and you've got to have your whole future defined, right? And at that point, you just really don't know what the next step forward is, never mind like the next 20 miles ahead. Yeah. So I had a route where I went to college and realized like the options that I chose kind of wasn't for me. And then I ended up going down the apprenticeship route and spent some time at Rolls-Royce, which is called Mitchell Bearings. They do a training program up in Newcastle and in partnership with Newcastle College. And then I ended up going to Nissan Motor Manufacturing plant in Sunderland. Everyone's probably heard of it if you're UK based. Obviously biggest car plant in the UK. So I ended up spending just under 10 years in Nissan. Again, that was kind of a role I went into, but I didn't necessarily know if that was going to be like my whole future panned out for us. You know, I didn't know if that was going to be the role that was going to define my life. And I did enjoy my time there. I had different roles from working on the production line and the assembly of the vehicles, all the way through to spending like my last 4.5 years in quality roles there. There was 2 different quality departments, and I spent time across both of them. Like I say, I did enjoy my time there, but for me, I was just looking for something else in terms of a challenge. The nature of manufacturing, it was kind of, once you had established the working practices there wasn't really much more that you would develop unless you wanted to have a career pathway into like team leader and then supervisor. But for me, that just the general culture and leadership style just didn't necessarily fit who I was as a person. And a lot of the time people think about the next step and moving into leadership positions, but don't really think about, does it align with you and your values and approach? Because there's so many different styles to leadership. It's not just a one size fits all. And I think sometimes you have to be honest with yourself, because there is other opportunities out there and you don't always just have to take that path that's presented in front of you. So for me, I knew that kind of wasn't the direction I wanted to go in. So how do I challenge myself going forward? And I actually had the opportunity to spend some time with some engineers at Nissan who were working on a system at the end of the production line. So you may have seen it on the TV or in car magazines. It's the final stretch. There's big light tunnels, and we're checking for defects on the exterior of the car. And what they were doing was building like a machine learning program to identify through images whether something was a paint defect in the car. or a scratch, or whether it was actually somebody's trousers as they were walking past the
Ah,
camera going to the canteen.
right.
And I just thought it was super cool, you know. Hadn't
Yeah.
really seen anything like that, and like Nissan's known for its innovation and stuff. And anyway, so it was great to see that they were forward thinking and thinking how can we leverage like these technologies to support us within our roles. And I got talking to them, and they said that this program was written in Python, and to me, I didn't have a
Wow.
clue what he meant. I was like, Python the snake, Monty
Yeah.
Python, like who knows? But it sparked a little bit of an interest, and I was asking some more questions around it, and I ended up just going home and jumping on everybody's best friend Google and
Yeah.
just having a look what Python was, and I was understanding it was a programming language and looking at what it was used for. And I just spent a number of weeks just doing a little bit of research and like what type of roles are out there in technology. I'd been surrounded by technology within Nissan, and
Yeah.
I've always had a passion for technology and an understand like a desire to understand how systems work and the complexities behind it, but never really thought about technology in a different way, and a path into it. So as I started doing my research, I seen that there was roles in software development and software testing, and it was the software testing side that actually like caught my eye.
Yeah.
And when I was reading the job descriptions, I was like, do you know, like I've spent 4.5 years in quality roles, and it's got to
Yeah.
be similar. There's got to be
Yeah.
some transferable skills there.
Yeah.
And I was actually on the lookout for junior roles to make that transition. Um, and started my own journey. I went on many people might have heard of Code Academy. So I
Yeah.
used their platform to start my own learning around fundamentals of programming to bolster what I was trying to learn about the upcoming technology industry that I was about to venture into. And a role become available at Tombola Bingo over in
Oh
Sunderland.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't as a bingo call out as a test analyst, a junior, but I had the opportunity to interview there, and I really focused in on those transferable skills. I was coming into a completely new industry, but what could I use from my experience and my background in traditional engineering and manufacturing and bring that to a technology role? And with having that focus, I was able to capture the attention of those who were interviewing us, and
Yeah.
thankfully they liked what they heard, and they trusted what I was saying and thought that I could bring a lot of value to their team, especially in a junior role. And I had that passion and ambition to drive myself forward, but also collaboratively work with other people as well. They took that chance on us, and that was my first transition into technology.
And never looked back since. No.
Never looked back. Never looked back.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I think a couple of points in that. Like, it is becoming more and more popular now in tech, isn't it, for the forward-thinking organisations to offer alternative routes into the workforce. Is um is that is that something that Dunelm? Obviously, you're at Dunelm. Is that something that Dunelm do as well? Are they involved in schemes like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the graduate program. So that's across the whole of technology. It's not just specific to one particular discipline. So we obviously work with colleges, universities, and create opportunities for people to join our graduate program and come into all sorts of areas across technology. And just because they start in, say, our BA chapter or quality engineering chapter, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll finish there. The importance of our program is to do rotations. You're
Oh,
new
nice.
to technology roles, and it's really important that you get to experience all of those roles across the business as well and get the right exposure. Because to my point before, starting your journey out, you don't necessarily know where you want to go to. So the best thing we can do as an employer, because every every kind of partnership with an employer and an employee is 50-50, and there is things that the individual is going to bring to the company, but there's things that we can do for them. And part of that is making sure they have the right exposure and the right experiences to help them find what works best for them. Because if they do, then that's what's going to help the company in the long run, by having people who are passionate about the roles that they do, not just because they've found a role and been placed in it, you know.
Yeah. It's not just put a square peg in a square hole and
Yeah,
you stay there forever nowadays, is it? It's there's a lot of flexibility, and I think it's great. You hit on it before. Look, people coming out of college and school and things like that, they don't necessarily know where they want to go, do they? They want
yeah,
to. It's important to pick up life skills before you really decide which route suits you best. When I was like, careers fairs at school, I was always asked, well, what do you want to do, Adrian? I was like, a bank manager or a fighter pilot. And I didn't realise at the time that I was nowhere near clever enough to do either one of them. So recruitment it was, but it's great to have those alternative routes. And I think I talked to where I know I had a guy called Clem Pickering on the podcast. I know you've been on some of his webinars.
yeah.
And when he was at Infinity Works, they were scaling up through an apprenticeship, and he was saying to me they had baristas join them, someone who was a school teacher, they had somebody off an oil rig. Obviously, you've got to have that interest and a level of competence or knowledge, if you like. But
Yeah.
I think the companies that are willing to open the mind and not have an open mind about it rather than closed will really benefit, won't they, from the skills available in the market.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you've got to broaden your horizons as a business, especially because technology is so competitive, and getting the best talent for your business, you can't just be single-minded. You have to look at alternative routes. And there, like, we have the graduate program, but we also offer those junior roles. You don't normally see it a lot throughout technology, but we really are about supporting people's careers, like within Dunelm. So that's why we offer those. Another pathway is coming into a junior position. And like we had one example where there was a not in my team, but within our performance team, there's a gentleman in there who didn't never similar to me, never worked in kind of technology. His previous job was in kind of robotics. And made the transition to go to a junior performance test engineer role, and he's just embraced the opportunity and he's absolutely excelling in it. And it's just great to see how somebody can make a career switch. Doesn't matter whether you're 18 or you're 60-year-old, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There isn't a timeline on it, and it's when you're ready and when a company is ready to support you in the same way to create that opportunity. And when you get that harmony between the two, I mean, great things happen.
Yeah, you're away then, aren't you? I think the desire from the individual and the support from the organisation, you can really make some good things happen. And I think it surprises me that there's companies still in the world, well, still in tech today that are still very rigid. I want a 2-1 from a red brick university, and you must have computer science. The benefits are clear for everyone to see. Like you said, people get to experience other traits in life and have access to the tech market and tech jobs later on. But the companies benefit massively because they're getting that diverse skill set as well, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
One thing I wanted to ask while we're just touching on Dunelm, and obviously it's Culture Corner. What's the culture like at Dunelm? And how do you guys, what's your focus on involving it as a leadership team?
It's really good. Obviously, I'm not just saying that because I obviously work for them, but it is like what I noticed when I moved into technology. Culture is completely different, and I can't say I've experienced a bad culture. I think there is pros and cons to all businesses and how they operate and how they foster creating a positive culture. But Dunelm's certainly been above and beyond anything I've seen. And obviously I do a lot of public speaking and network with a lot of other people who work in other organisations, and you find out a little bit about their culture, and everybody's kind of interested in ours. We're very open with it as well. and I think that's like, because we're able to publicize what we do because we're transparent with our whole entire process.
Yeah.
So like from a leadership team, like to build a good foundation, I think it's about like how do you bring people together, and we have a massive emphasis on making the most out of the events when you're bringing teams together and as leadership groups as well. So we have because we have a hybrid working policy, so we have
Yeah.
offices based in central London, we have one in Leicester, but then also you can work from home for a proportion of that time as well. And there isn't really a mandated timeline on that. There's a certain level of expectation. Obviously, there's compromises to be had, but we just we look for, when we coming into the offices, how can we make the most out of our experiences? So as a quality engineering chapter, for instance, we have a chapter day every single quarter where we'll bring like 60, 70 people together, and it's about
Okay.
kind of down tooling for the day and making the most of in-person interactions, building relationships, speaking to people who you might not necessarily interact with on a day-to-day basis, creating them fun, engaging networking opportunities, bringing in external speakers to increase our knowledge, but also giving ways for people to speak or run workshops with the community group and stuff as well. That's been massively successful. We've done that ever since like I've been here, and the other chapters do the same. And that just creates a really good culture of bringing people together through shared understanding and shared values as well. We also do things like in-person leadership days across leadership teams, but also with our own individual leadership groups as well, which has been massively successful. We do tech conferences and stuff internally. So
Wow.
we kind of write off the whole day, and it's all about internal and external speaking. And the last one was moving between different areas of the office space. Obviously, we've got a huge office in Leicester, and that was a massive success and got people engaging in different ways and created new platforms and opportunities for people to speak up kind of in a more comfortable, safe space than having to venture out of your business and
Yeah.
not necessarily knowing the faces who are in front of you, who you're presenting to. So we do a lot of things like that. And then so some of our values being like stronger together
Yeah.
and like long-term thinking and things like that. Like it's always not just focusing on now, how do we look forward to the future and how do we improve that for individuals through building the right career paths and supporting them with those journeys, creating opportunities to move into different roles. If you've been in a quality engineer role for a period of time and you think you want to try it out in business analysis, that door isn't closed. How do we create that pathway for you? So we're constantly just listening to learning to individuals and seeing how we can constantly adapt our business to create the right culture of learning and support in each other, because that's the way you truly retain talent. It's not just about
Yeah.
attracting talent, but it's about keeping people when you've got it as well. And the only way you can do that is by building trust with individuals and listening to people and making sure that everybody's voice is heard.
Absolutely. It sounds like there's a lot of hard work that goes into it because it's not easy, is it? It constantly evolves and it
Yeah.
takes a lot of hard work, not just from the leadership groups at the top, but to wash that down through into the teams as well. And going back to what you were saying earlier about the apprentices and how they don't just come in as a BA to get an opportunity to move into other roles. What you've just explained about what the company does there, events wise, in person, it must make it so much easier then for people to integrate with other teams, like
Hmm.
mixed leadership events and that kind of thing. Is because it's very easy for people just to be siloed, isn't it, within their
Yeah,
businesses and
definitely.
just think about how things work within their team and not realizing how their team, what they do in one team, potentially impacts in what happens in another team as well.
Hmm.
So interesting. You work really hard on it. Really hard on it. I was going to say during your, so obviously talk about leadership during your career, is there any one time where you pivoted, you made a choice to pivot from sort of single contribution? Was there any action that made you think, actually, I'm going to be a leader rather than an individual contributor, if you like?
I think my aspirations to become a leader started long before I ever had the opportunity to
Right.
step into that role. And I think that goes back to me time at Nissan and
Mm.
seeing a leadership style. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Like I said, in every organization, in every industry, there's different leadership practices. And I think the beauty is we can definitely learn from different industries. And I'd certainly encourage people to look at different techniques and different styles that are applied outside of your own like organization and industry and stuff. But I just knew that I wanted to do something different. I wanted to take a different approach, and I'd always been a people person,
Yeah.
and I found it like building those relationships was quite easy. And I think it's because I enjoy the people side so much. I love understanding about other people and their journeys and what really excites them and things. And I take real pleasure in seeing other people progress.
Yeah.
So I knew that was a path I wanted to go down. I just wanted to do it slightly differently and see if I could put my own stamp on things as well, and not just follow how things have always been done. And that opportunity opened itself up in my second role. So when I moved from Dunelm, I moved to a company called Makoto, and I was a quality engineer initially there, and I had the opportunity to step into the automation manager role, and that was the first time of like working with a team of people, albeit a small team, but learning how I can build those relationships and changing the types of conversations that I'm having with like key stakeholders and things as well, of not just focusing on the here and now, but what is the long-term vision that we have.
Yeah.
So that was my first step and allowed us to try things out. And obviously there was things that you learn that through experiences, things that go well and things that don't. And I think the key is just being able to adapt to your situation and just constantly learning from your experiences and things. But that was kind of why I got into leadership and kind of took on that opportunity.
Well, I've got a good idea what the answer to this is going to be, but what's your, as you evolve, what's your leadership style? What's your?
I'm very level-headed and relaxed. I'm very empathetic. I like to build strong relationships with people by understanding them as an individual, not just from a work perspective, but who that individual is. Work's only a small part of who we are as a human being, and there's so much more that contributes to who we are as a person. So we're willing, obviously, understand, what their life's like outside of work. What do they have family? Like
Yeah,
what's the names of them? Like
absolutely.
what type of things do they enjoy on a weekend? And then I think when you build that type of open relationship as well, and what helps is because I'm a very open myself. So there's no question like I won't answer, and people who know like you can just ask us anything and I will tell you the answer, and I think that's really important to have that type of leadership style, being that open book and not closed off, because it makes you more relatable as an individual and people feel more comfortable to open up themselves. And if you can start by building a relationship that way, when it comes to things like career conversations and things, it becomes a lot easier because you know and understand what challenges that person might have, what desires they want, where do they see themselves in 6 months or the next 5 years, and how you can best support them. From a day-to-day perspective as well, it might not just be about like how do you create opportunities for them to gain new experiences, but how do you just support them emotionally as a leader as well, and understand when they are a little bit off their game or something's up. How do you pick up on that? You've got to understand the individual. themselves and know their general behaviors and traits and their values to be able to pick up on those things.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And as you obviously share your vulnerabilities. It sounds like as a leader,
Yeah.
you put yourself out there, and let people know. I imagine how you're feeling, and things that are going on in your life. It just lowers the barriers, doesn't it? It brings down the barriers and creates that trust.
Yeah, definitely. And I think vulnerability, like you mentioned, it is absolutely key. And I wonder, and I've spoke about it recently on Mine and Stu's podcast as well. Like, um, it's massively important, especially in leadership, because they talk about leading by example. And when we put on this false front, like everything's fine,
Yeah,
people don't relate to that. It's not how the world operates. And if we go through ups and downs, like we share it, we're all human beings. We're just put in different positions and we've got different titles and responsibilities, but ultimately we all share the same feelings and emotions. So the more you can talk about it, the more you humanize a lot of the process. And then people don't get the anxiety building up because they think it's just them, and this word of imposter syndrome we hear floated around a lot. It's just because we don't talk enough about our emotions and how we feel. Like us doing this podcast, right? Like a lot of people might think, whoa, going on a podcast like that would be so intimidating, and look at
yeah,
these,
yeah,
they're
yeah.
just talking through it, and it's great. But in reality, did I have nerves going on to the podcast? Absolutely. Do I have nerves right now? Absolutely. But
Yeah.
it's, you just come to the point where you embrace those nerves. It's just a feeling. It's there for a reason, and you run forward with it, you know. But the more people understand that, then the better generally society can be, but also our culture within our organisations as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think if you're not nervous, you're not at your best.
Yeah,
It shows that you care about something, and it sort of it makes you sharper. I think if and on point with it. And I think one of the things that you mentioned there, it's not transact. You can't be a transactional leader, can you? It's if you really want to have your team to trust you, you've got to get to, like, what makes you tick. Exactly what you were saying. Understand about your family. What do you do outside of work, and that you talk about creating psychologically safe environments. That's very, very popular, and I think being sharing your vulnerabilities as a leader is a key part in establishing that.
and you know, on psychological safety as well, there is a lot about there, and obviously everyone's making an effort to foster psychologically safe environments. But psychological safety is a feeling of an individual. You can't tell somebody if they feel psychologically safe. Only they can tell you that, and they will never tell you that if you don't lead by example and foster an open type culture. And that starts with leadership just being more open and honest with their emotions and stuff as well. Because when it's closed off, you'll never achieve that.
Do you think that's the first? Do you think that's the first piece of achieving a psychologically safe environment? Do you think it's do you think the initial starting block or the initial building block is the vulnerability
I
shown
think so.
from the leader? Yeah,
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 I think as a starting piece, you have to say what is your mission. So where are you at currently, and where would you like to get to? What's your aspirations of like a future environment, and then how you're going to do that is by leading by example and opening up about some of the things that you find difficult and struggles with, and seeing how other people could potentially support you as well, in the same way as you want to support them. And I think that it's just that initial way of breaking down walls, because when titles change as well, like it makes it more difficult to have sometimes open and effective communication,
yeah, yeah,
just because somebody's seen as a manager. But to me, point before, it's just a role and a responsibility. It's we're all human beings at the end of the day, and sometimes we get sucked into that trap of we can't like ask certain questions because they're a leader. Of course we can, you know. So we've got, as leaders, we've got to create that platform where people feel like they can do that, because sometimes you've just got to say it, you know,
yeah,
and put it
yeah.
out there.
Yeah, making people comfortable. Part of it's obviously making people comfortable enough to challenge, isn't it? Challenge,
Yeah.
what's happening in the status quo, if you like. And
Hmm.
I know one of the things in relation to psychologically safe environments is the ability to fail.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned it to some people, like it's all right to fail, but some leaders are like, oh, it just brings them out in a cold sweat. They're not able to get their heads around that. Is it all right? Is it all right to fail? How do you embrace that within your team? How do you get that message out there?
Absolutely, it's the only time you learn, and that's where the message starts. So if everything was a perfect success every time, we would never evolve, and society, businesses, technologies would never be where it is today. We only learn through our challenges and our failures. You hear about some of the most successful business people in the world, and how many times have they been bankrupt before they were a
Yeah,
billionaire? Like
yeah,
you've got to go through that, and you've got to say it in the same way to your team. Sometimes, as a leader as well, you'll have a discussion with your team and say it's about a particular approach. You might think it's the wrong thing, but sometimes it's important just to allow your team the space to try it out, even though you might disagree with it. But you let them try it out and you say, look, I've got some thoughts on it. I don't know if it's necessarily the right approach, but I'm going to 100% invest in your approach, and I'm going to
yeah,
back you, and we're going to try it out. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. We're just going to learn from the experience and see what we can extract from that process to make us better the next time going forward. And sometimes the things, those situations where we have these breaking moments and would never in a million years think about a certain approach, they only come because of the moments where we've just went through that discovery and we
yeah.
failed, and it's just uncovered great learnings from that experience. So yeah, it's just making sure that as a leadership group you allow your teams that space to experiment and fail and and keep talking about failures. Like, don't let it become a word that's not discussed a lot. Talk about it all the time and the great things that come from failures, because it's just a narrative that we need to switch. And also, if other leaders have a negative view on failure, work with them. If you hear
Yeah,
somebody having adding negative contributions to a team's failing, challenge them on that, and then
yeah,
also coach them through why we see failures as an opportunity for growth and how they can too as well.
yeah. That's brilliant. Yeah. So all your peer group, not just your teams. It's educating everybody around you. And
Yeah, absolutely.
do you think that's going through that process with your team and having that mindset and setting that up? Do you think that's more of a coaching approach than because I
Definitely.
bring this up because someone once said to me that they tried to explain the difference to me between coaching and mentoring in recruitment, whereas a coach allows you to evolve and learn, yourself. Whereas a mentor, I might get this wrong, but whereas a mentor is seen more as somebody who said, "I've been in that position previously. This is what I did, and this is how you move forward."
Yeah.
Is that, I think the world's changed. We'll go on to this, but the world is definitely changing, isn't it, in the way you go about things?
Yeah, it's definitely a coaching mentality, and I think that's where it's really great with leadership and being able to. It's part of psychological safety as well, being able to challenge. It's not just about being able to always just speak your mind. It's being comfortable with being challenged as well. But in terms of got mind blank there. Oh, what was it?
The coaching aspect as opposed to mentoring.
Yes. So from a coaching perspective side, like if you're in a situation where somebody disagrees with what you're saying and they've got a different view on it, mentoring's never going to apply to that situation, because you're going to tell them based off your experiences, which we already know they disagree with. So you need to use
Yeah,
coaching techniques to let them find their own answers that find that balance. So you'll coach them and you'll ask them certain questions, and you'll allow them to go through that self-discovery through actively coaching them to then bring them on board and be able to influence them in that way. Whereas applying mentoring, it would just never have a positive outcome.
It wouldn't work. Do you think there's still a place for mentoring? Do you think in some situations you can try? I did some coaching a few years ago. I need to get back onto it really, and I found it brilliant because I found it tiring at first and hard work.
Yeah,
But frustrating sometimes. Sometimes I was like, I just want you to tell me the answer, But it was great. I think. Do you think there's certain situations where if you don't know, you don't know, so you'd have to give someone the answer, if you like, or point them in a direction, or is it always coaching in every situation?
No, I think it's a balance. Coaching, mentoring, like most things, it's just a tool set that we can use, and you apply it to the right situation. So if somebody just doesn't know how to deal with coaching, like when you're asking coaching type questions to an
Yeah,
individual and they've just never been through that experience before, maybe that's not the best place to start off. If it's something that's time critical and needs to be done straight away, like if something happened in the business and it needs to be addressed, it's probably not the best opportunity to coach somebody. It needs to be a mentor, and so based off your experience, this is how you address the issue
right. Yeah,
promptly.
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes within a coaching situation, you may need to just dip into a little bit of mentoring as well to give somebody a steer in that conversation. So they might start off okay and they go through a bit of a discovery, and they kind of on a path of they're understanding how they can potentially get to a solution.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just need to apply a little bit of mentoring based on your experience, just to give them like that rubber dinghy into the sea. If you
Yeah,
feel like in a coaching session you feel like they're drowning a bit and they're losing focus and then they seem a little bit unsure, then give them that little lifeline, and it kind of gives them the steer back on track, and gives them a bit of direction.
absolutely. So it's a blended approach, really.
Yeah,
It's not one or the other. You need to use all the tools in your toolbox, really.
yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask you this because I know we touched on it previously, and I know you were keen to talk about it. The evolution in leadership. Do you think there's a change in leadership styles now, and it's for the better? I know we referenced the SAS man previously, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think it is changing. It's slow. I mean, in a technology industry where everything changes so fast and sometimes we can never keep up, this is something that I would like to have change at the same sort of pace, but unfortunately it's not. But at least it's changing. That's the main
yeah,
thing. And I think, to me point before, the more that we can talk about why we need to change and how we can change and how we can support each other in that evolution, then that's only going to accelerate the change that we see within our industry. But yeah, it certainly is changing. We used to like leadership, just generally, like we said previously, the SAS type figure, like that cold, emotionless person who is the leader and everybody reports up to that person and they're the one who has all of the answers and sets
yeah.
the direction of travel. Doesn't need to be like that. And I think we need to be comfortable as leaders as well, of knowing we don't always have to have all of the answers. And we're not a leader because we know everything or we know the most. So, like, this is why we have a team and we bring people together of diverse skill sets and ideas and personalities and values. Because when we bring people together in that way, we're like the glue to that situation, and we can create great things by leveraging everybody else's qualities. So we don't have to be that one who is always kind of the front runner. It's how do we give other people opportunities to lead as well. And it's kind of like I think I mentioned it to you in a previous conversation about how, as leaders, do we make ourselves redundant?
Yeah, you did.
Because knowledge is always seen as power, but it's only powerful when it's shared. And that's the narrative that we need to kind of get onto, that as leaders, how do we create opportunities for other people to come through and become leaders themselves, and leaders of their own individual self as well, through applying coaching and getting them excited about coaching and see how they can apply it to themselves or to other people as well. And it's not that we're making ourselves redundant in our role, we're just creating more knowledge through our communities by being open with our leadership and sharing the knowledge that we have. And I think like we definitely need to do that within organizations as well, as that's part of building a succession plan. If somebody was to ever leave, we always hear about it. Well, they had all of the knowledge and they're gone. What happens now? Whereas if we create that culture where other people are invited into our leadership groups and they're more open and with our communication, and we invite people in and stuff, and we share the types of things we're talking about and the types of things we're working on, then we don't run into situations where somebody has all of the knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. That, I suppose, like we'll keep calling it the SAS type leader, but I
Yeah,
think it's a single point of failure, isn't it? You
yeah,
know, a single point of failure, and that's no, that's no good for anyone. I don't know whether is it ego, is it fear, is it? I don't know what it is that drives that, but it's there is definitely, like you said, there's a step change, isn't there? And we're evolving on that. And do you have any sort of knowledge shares or tips or traits about how you empower? You know, you were talking about bringing on making yourself redundant, how you empower and help evolve the next generation of leadership.
yeah. So like have conversations with people about, say, what is a goal that you're working on, or what is a business goal, and build that understanding up with your team so everybody's on board with the idea of what we're trying to achieve. And then from that, invite people to the conversation to come up with ideas and contribute. And when they do, give them opportunities to collaborate on it. So where you might have taken that away initially and did that yourself or with your leadership group, give them that opportunity to shine. And they don't have to do it as individuals. Sometimes that can be really intimidating. And that's what actually deters people from getting involved, is because it's all on them. So create smaller working groups and encourage multiple people to collaborate together, so they can basically build confidence from each other. And also it helps with the networking aspect, so they start building stronger relationships with each other and know that they've got each other's backs, and then they can go through that together, and they can basically take on as much or as little as they want, but it gives them the opportunity to step forward and try something new. So that's kind of one of the things that I would definitely encourage other people to try and do that take as well. Don't always take it on yourself just because you're the leader.
Yeah,
Look for positive opportunities that you can give to other people to shine.
and don't always make like a big song and dance about it. If you like, just right, we're going to do this, and this almost open the door a little bit and let them step through
Yeah.
and just build that confidence and go from there really.
And then I think the bit that's normally forgotten a lot of the time, and I think it's not in technology or anything like that. I think it's just as human beings, we don't celebrate the successes of others as
Yeah,
much as we should.
yeah,
And when somebody steps up and they do something, or even like to our point before, if they do something and it doesn't go right and it's classed as a failure, they like took that challenge on board. So celebrate it publicly,
yeah.
celebrate the success of others. It's not just always about our own successes. It's like how can you build other people up? It goes a long way, and people do remember it. And it's we we have to actively challenge ourselves to do that, because just generally the way society is that negativity or complaining about something just comes straight off the tip of the tongue, whereas a bit of positivity, we have to actively think about it. So celebrate
Yeah,
your team's successes. It can be in a private message, it can be publicly, it could be, if you like, we have schemes at Dunelm where we can reward people or do like a little Amazon gift card, or
yeah,
put if there's been a nice we do like e-cards and things, so you can write a nice little note, and that goes into a drawer, and we do a spin the wheel, and it's just
Nice.
like creating a culture of positivity as well.
Yeah. There's some great ideas there, and it is just putting a bit of thought into it, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's it. You know, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It's just something, and you see people visibly lift from that
yeah.
recognition, don't you?
And going back to my point before as well, as a leader, this is why I encourage you to also understand your individuals personally, who you're working with around you and within your teams, because not everybody likes the same praise done in the same way. So some people
Yeah,
might not like it being done publicly. So like on a Slack or a Teams channel or something like that, or in an email group, this person's done fabulously well. Like that might be quite a negative experience for them, whereas they
yeah.
may prefer it just in a one-to-one communication. So just be mindful and aware of that as well.
That's a really good point. People receive information, and it comes in not just for rewards, isn't it? Do you find that as well as if you're giving out messages within the business and things like that? Some people like to receive that message verbally, other people like to see it written, etc.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like there's different ways to recognize people, and their efforts and stuff as well. So it's about just tailoring that to the individual and what matters most to them, because not everybody wants a gift. Some people just want the words, that is the
yeah,
gift itself. So it's just about, again, just understanding the individual and what really matters to them.
perfect. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is you mentioned sort of accountability, and you've talked to me about it in the past, is holding each other accountable. Not within your teams, but within your leadership teams as well. I know you've mentioned that. Do you have any like any processes or strategies that you can share with people about how you hold each other accountable and the positives that come out of that?
Yeah, I mean, just when we just say like holding each other accountable, it sounds really scary, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
like just the way like we generally phrase it as well, like it'll get people's backs up, and they're like, well, I don't want to do anything wrong because this person's going to hold us accountable, or they're going
yeah,
to publicly say what I've done wrong. And it's not about that. It's just about, again, understanding each other within leadership. So one of the good things we do, and it was actually brought to us by Stuart Day, who was head of quality at Dunelm. He's now
right,
at Capital One.
yeah,
He brought in a great exercise where we would base it. It's like a heat mapping where we are within our leadership team with our challenges that we're facing, and it's basically a bullseye chart. And I'll get a link, and we can share the exercise if people want to take it away and do
yeah,
it with their teams. But there is the central bullseye, which is like kind of your green area and things that you're working on that could you could do every single day, and there's no particular challenges. There's other things that are in your amber that are pushing you kind of outside of your comfort zone,
yeah,
but don't necessarily pose much of a threat to you or kind of anything else that you do. And then there's kind of the danger zone where you're like kind of overextending yourself. So the first exercise is understanding that at an individual perspective, because when we want to hold each other accountable, we have to look at what type of things could influence changes within us, with our decision making. Are we overextending ourselves? Do we need additional support? And it's being open and honest about the types of challenges we have and how can we leverage our leadership group around us to support us with that, or where
right,
sometimes we think we can take on loads and actually we just need a second opinion to say, Chris, you seem a bit low at the minute, and
yeah.
you don't seem yourself what you got that you're working on. And by highlighting that just visually as well, people can chip in and kind of help and coach you and advise you and take kind of care of you as a leader.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
And then second to that, another thing that we do is, and Dunelm does it with all of our leaders, and I would encourage other companies to do it as well, as a thing called a Luma Sparks survey, which is basically doing a personality survey on you as an individual. So
Right.
there is a whole range of questions that you go through, and the idea is that it maps it out into your default leadership behaviors. So things that you will naturally gravitate towards. It's just baked in you as a human being, and it's aligned with your values. And what you'll see is there is people within your leadership group who are the complete opposite to you, and
Right.
and that's a great thing though. And it's to my
Yeah.
point before, it's about creating diversity in your leadership team or within the other teams within your organization, because then we can hold each other accountable more as well. So
Yeah.
if I'm aware of, say, your general behavior traits and your natural tendencies, then I understand you more as an individual. So when
Yeah.
there is an opportunity for you to grow, I can help you see that. Whereas
Yeah.
when you're just the only person who knows you, it's harder for people to then hold you accountable and give you the opportunities to learn from that accountability.
Yeah.
Because I think the learning aspect's the key. It's not just about holding somebody accountable. It's like, for what reason? What do you get from that? So the more we can understand our default behaviors and build that whole picture up of us as an individual and the type of things that can influence and impact those tendencies, then we can better create environments where we can like learn from each other and leverage each other as well.
So those two processes that you mentioned, the heat maps and the lunar sparks,
Yeah.
that's about understanding yourself as an individual and your
Yes.
triggers, and
Yeah.
also understanding other people and how they may react or respond in certain situations, right?
Yeah. And when you put all of the leadership stuff together as well, and you build up a picture of all of the different behaviors, values, skills that you have within your particular team, you can see where you've got gaps, or where then you might have an emphasis on a particular subset of skills, behaviors, and values, but there is certain aspects where maybe it's only one or two people, they might be the outliers and they hold those particular things. So then that comes at a bit of a risk. So is that then an opportunity for your leadership team to focus on developing more awareness and skills around the skills that they have, so they don't become that single point of failure?
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. Really interesting. And for anybody listening to this, thinking, what's the benefit of having diverse teams? What would you say the benefit to having diverse teams is, rather than just I've got a good idea myself, but rather than having, say, I thought I was really good at X, and I was thinking, right, I want to build a team to drive this forward, and we'll be delivering this piece of software. And I just want a load of Adrians in my team because that's how we're going to achieve it.
Well, you're never going to grow. If we were all robots and we were carbon copies of each other, you're only going to grow in one direction, but you're never really going to evolve, right?
Yeah,
Like, and you through diversity, you create opportunities for failures as well, and that's where you're going to learn. If you are just doing the same thing all the time because we all thought the same, we all did it the same way, we would never have any way of holding each other accountable, like learning from each other, like evolving. It just would never happen. So, and I think you would never build a good company culture
yeah,
that way. And you would, or if you did, it might, well, it's only going to be good to your point, other Adrians, right? Um, so you're looking for carbon copies, and then as a business, if that's your approach, it makes it really, really challenging when you're trying to recruit in
absolutely.
in the technology sector where things are very competitive, and it's sometimes hard to get the right skills and get people into your businesses at the key times and stuff as well, because you're only looking at a very specific small talent pool. And it goes
Exactly.
back to the start of our conversation about diversifying your approach and the pool that you're picking from. looking at a wider range of audience and looking beyond the needs that you need right now, but thinking about the bigger picture and not just being narrow in your focus, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a brilliant example to people that are listening. It's why that's important, because you'll never, like you said, to your point, you'll never ever be challenged, and if you're not challenged, you'll never innovate, will you?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
you'll never learn. On the team aspect of it, do you, when you're building teams, do you ever see any repeatable characteristics that make that come together, you know, to make a good team outside of the technology, you know, outside of the technology skills that they're looking for, but like, you know, a doer or one person that's all more got some leadership traits to them? Is there pieces that make up the jigsaw on a regular basis?
Um, well, for us, because like one of our values as a business is stronger together. So you're always going to get people who are, say, more proactive than others, like those doers.
Yeah,
But I think it's more important to see how people operate within teams and how they can support each other, because it's great. It is great to have doers, but sometimes they're a bit of a lone wolf, and it doesn't always go towards fostering the right culture. It can sometimes be like, say, if you had a whole team of lone wolves, there's not going to be a lot of knowledge sharing. It's going
yeah,
to be back to the knowledge is power and stuff. So I
yeah,
think looking at how do we support each other as individuals, and them having that kind of selfless mentality of it's not all about them, it's how like supporting other people. I think that's the best kind of starting point to look for when fostering and building like high performing teams.
will that, to your point there, will you, when you hire for your teams, so do you do values based hiring, behavioural based hiring to, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so we have our four Dunelm values, and then off the back of that, we have 16 behaviours. And then our interview questions typically will be based around those values and those behaviours,
right,
um,
okay,
because that's ultimately what we're looking for. Obviously, there is the technology and the skill side of any role, right?
yeah,
You've still got to be able to do that, but we're not as like kind of cutthroat as some businesses would be around having those specific skills, because we acknowledge as a business that this is a relationship, and we're confident that we create the right opportunities for people to grow their careers within Dunelm.
yeah,
So initially, it's just about having the right mindset and the values and behaviors to fit the company culture, and then we can work with you to become your best self and help empower other people along that journey as well.
yeah, yeah. That's one of the things I wanted to ask you as well about teams. You know, there's a big focus on getting it right for your teams, making sure your teams have got that psychologically safe environment, they're happy, there's the trust there. You know, with remote working and hybrid working, that kind of thing, you can and you're delivering your work you've got to deliver. Sometimes it's high pressure environments. There can be a tendency in high pressure environments for people to work, you know, long hours over and above what's needed in the evenings, weekends, and all that kind of thing. And then you've got a risk of burnout. I imagine it's harder on remote and hybrid teams. How do you, as a leader, or how have you got any experiences of how you sort of monitor that or mitigate that type of risk?
It's an interesting question, because I have a fairly strong view on it. It shouldn't happen, full
Yeah,
stop. You shouldn't have people working ridiculously long hours, um, uh, extra than what they're contracted to, because that fundamentally highlights that there is a problem in your process within the hours in the 37 and a half, 40 hours a week that you work. And
yeah,
that's what you need to look at. So if that does happen in an organization, please don't let it continue. Have a look back at your processes. What's gone wrong? What's caused
yeah, yeah,
the need to overextend? Because if you don't address it, you will have a negative effect on culture, um, either immediately with an individual, or that type of situation can breed quite rapidly, and it can affect an organization, and it creates the wrong type of environment. Um, so be very mindful of it. So for me, like, just, you've got to nip it in the bud straight away if it happens. The only exception is if you know there is going to be a need for that. So for instance, we're a retailer, so we have peak times.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
going to have people who
yeah,
are on call, but that is an agreement that's made up front. They know that they're going to be on call. They'll volunteer to go on call as well. So it's a
yeah,
mutual agreement. It's
yeah,
not forced, because one of the unfortunate things that can happen is, if there is not that mutual agreement up front, people can overextend themselves, work these long hours, and it can go unnoticed by leaders.
yeah,
And that burnout effect can happen with individuals, and it happens with leadership group and stuff as well. And encourage people to hold themselves accountable. So if there is an opportunity, something happening where they're having to work additional hours, that they've got that safe space where they can say, this isn't necessarily right, and they can bring that to the attention of their line manager, and they feel
yeah,
confident to do so, because they know you're going to work with them to help find a better solution than them spending more of their time
yeah.
working, because it's work-life balance ultimately, and that's what helps you to retain top talent within your organizations, by looking out for people.
Absolutely. And I love that. Look internally. If that's happening, look internally. What's happening with your processes?
Yeah,
You know, similar to someone once mentioned to me, if somebody exits a company, or they moved on, have you done everything you could to support that individual?
yeah,
Yeah, to take the next step in their career, or have you done everything you can to help them progress and to move on?
hmm
And if you haven't, you know why why is that? Why has that happened? It's you've got to reflect internally, haven't you?
yeah, definitely.
I know I've been bending your ear for a long time now, well over an hour, and you're a busy guy. But there was one thing I was asking you, because you mentioned communication earlier. Is like, how important is communication when building high performing teams, and creating a really strong culture? Do you have any sort of key ways of communicating across your teams in a hybrid environment that work really well?
Yeah, it's fundamental, and it's definitely more challenging now in a hybrid world, especially since the COVID situation. When we were in an office and we were face to face, there was a lot more opportunities throughout the day where we were unconsciously aware that we were having opportunities to communicate. It just happened, whether you're walking through the office, just moving over to someone's desk,
Yeah,
catching up for a coffee. So you've got to be more mindful about when you bring people together, and is it for the right reasons. So, like, some of the things that we encourage is those in-person events.
yeah,
So making sure when we're bringing large groups of people together, it's for the right reasons. We're not just getting people to come together to sit behind a Teams call. It's
yeah,
fundamentally about building relationships, creating environments where we feel more comfortable talking to one another. So then when we do go back behind a Teams call, we've already established that bond with somebody, and it just becomes so much more relaxing and easier, and conversations flow a lot better. Multiple ways of communicating, whether that's through, like, Slack, Teams, emails, um, one-to-ones with obviously line managers, open door policies.
yeah.
We have, like, multiple gatherings where we'll bring people together for different topics, so like learning shares,
Ah, right,
and
okay, yeah,
alongside our chapter days, things like that. Just creating different ways in which people can communicate, because, to my point before, everybody's different as an individual. Not everybody communicates in the same way. Some people prefer face to face. Some people prefer cameras off in meetings. Some people prefer
yeah, yeah,
a Slack message, like a written message. So you've got to make sure that in order to have good communication across an organization or across your team, you have multiple ways in which to do it, and you don't just force people down one route, because that's not always the best way to go. And it's the same to every way in which we communicate can have positives, but it can also have negatives. So a lot of the time, your message can be misconstrued when you're sending it through typed form. You don't always quite get your message across because you can't see body language and emotion and things like that. And it's the same with like on Teams calls, you can get away with so much, but you can't necessarily see the bottom half of us, or if I'm shuffling about or I'm fidgeting, and that can get you can get a lot even from the lower half, like, and understanding whether someone's nervous and things like that. So you can get a lot from the body language. So picking the right communication channel for the right comms that you want to put out, and just being mindful of that, as well as individual preferences.
Yeah. And it all works, it all loops back in nicely to exactly what you were saying right at the start, is you can't be transactional. You have to understand your people, don't you? You were driving that hard, rightly so. It's like, understand your people, what makes them tick, understand everything about them to provide them the best possible experience and allow them to be the best version of themselves. I think you said it, at the start. So that's brilliant. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I've learned a bag of information. It's been brilliant, and really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Adrian, for the time today, and obviously those networking opportunities with yourself ahead of this call, and just building up that relationship. I think that's always key, to allow space and time to get to know each other, and I really appreciate that, and for the opportunity to come on the podcast today, and hopefully the audience can take some things away from it. And I mean, from my perspective, if anybody does listen and has any questions or want to reach out, you can always hit us up via LinkedIn, and I'll always try and get back to you and answer your questions. And some of the things that we talked about today, like around the heat mapping and like Luma Sparks, I can provide a little bit more information, so you can go away and have a look what that looks like, and if that could be something that would benefit you as an individual or your teams as well.
That'd be awesome. Thanks for that, Chris. I'm sure people will reach out to you. We'll put your LinkedIn address in the notes as well, and like you said, and a few other bits, so people can get in contact with you. And no doubt we'll do another one of these later on in the year. So thanks very much for your time. Cheers.
Yeah, no worries.